I'll be honest, I wasn't really attracted to men's work. Men's group does sort of conjure up maybe a more formal sharing process or other sort of agenda. When I moved here, I started hanging out with you and the guys. First quote unquote men's group that I'd been a part of, where plenty of real issues have been unpacked and come up, but more or less it's a loose hang. It turned out to be this inspiring thing that just helped me on my path more quickly than I would have if I had stayed in a bubble. I feel like myself when we gather, but I also feel like I want to be an even better version of myself. In this case, you've gathered a group of very successful, likable, solid guys who are easy to be inspired by. The origin kind of became how to create that sort of feeling and offer it to men who don't have access to a room like that.
You were kind of conjuring up, what does this even look like?
We've been calling it a men's group, but it's definitely not the same format as any men's group that I've been offered. I started to think about who would be willing to be one of those guys in the room. Paul Check, you, Eben Britton, Laird Hamilton, Alex Gray, and then my brother Jason. These are men who are excelling in their stated dream. The program is sort of oriented around the guys identifying, clarifying, and qualifying their stated dream in life as sort of your North Star. It's what gets you over the gravity of your daily challenges.
How many times have you been on the show? Is it just a once with Eb, or did you been on a coffee? No, there was another one. The four of us, I didn't release that one.
Yeah.
Brian, right?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about it because the answer I think is one.
I think I could release. I feel better about releasing that one now.
We also recorded one that we didn't love, which is the funniest way to introduce an episode because it's last time we got together, the conversation really sucked. But stay tuned for this one. It didn't
suck. It just got a little verbose and it wasn't as concise.
Stay tuned for this one. It's going to be great.
That may be released at some point. Maybe not though.
Yeah, we have a couple unreleased ones. I think we have one released with Eb, which was great.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we'll refer people back to that to get more in the weeds with a lot of the biodynamic and kind of the work you've done in that space with Be Here, with the property and in that. And we will touch on that because it's important to understand where the products come from. But today is about celebrating you finally launching your website.
It is funny. Yeah. Today it's as we
10 years you said it's been about?
Well, honestly, I can nutshell what you were just referring to, my background, by answering the same question, because for a while we were developing a hotel. That's what we were doing on the ground, And so I never, even though, we had developed some of these products and we were selling them through what was a private membership club just locally in St. Helena, California, which is where the farm is at. It was not conceived as being a brand that sells products. We were developing these products, you could say, in secrecy for our future hotel opening. So it would have become the spa products and the in-room amenities and the food and beverage program at a hotel. And so during that time, we were many years away from actually opening as a hotel, at which point I knew we would have some sort of probably complicated website that most, luxury hotels do, including a reservation system and all that stuff. So I never wanted to take the leap of spending a bunch of money to develop a website when I knew a couple of years when the hotel opened, we were going to develop a website. And so we just forever had a one-pager that was a list of our stockists, the places where the products are sold. And that was exclusively it. And I tried to, this is behind the scenes stuff here now, but maybe the audio did just cut out for a second.
Yeah, fine.
Not a problem. Maybe other entrepreneurs can relate. But maybe I uniquely had this problem for myself, but I developed our website multiple times over the last 10 years and didn't end up liking what I created and didn't want to release it. And then so I just kept this one-pager list of our stockists for this entire time. And it's been working perfectly fine for us because the list of our stockists is actually pretty impressive if you're sort of aware of who they are and you're interested in spas and hotels. It's a great list of partner brands that sell our collection. So yeah, it's worked for us. And just like 2 weeks ago, right before I launched the website. So I'm obviously now been working on the website for months. I'm excited about it. I was at this spa buyers conference where you go represent your brand. You meet spas and hotels who want to buy, in this case, from sustainable quote unquote brands. It's called the Sustainability Buyers Conference at the Green Spa Network. And I met this woman there who's another founder of a great brand. And I won this award for called Sustainable Newcomer for achieving like great something in sustainability and social upliftment. And there's another couple sentences for what the award was for. And this woman said, I voted for you. I was like, how'd you even know about us? There's just nothing on our website. Do you go to our Instagram and just like the vibe or whatever? And she goes, no, I just saw your website. And I was like, these guys don't even have a real website. They must be up to, legit shit. They're probably like out actually doing something legit.
Yeah.
Like they don't even have a website. So I was like, oh, son of a bitch. That one pager was working fine. Maybe we didn't even need a website, but no, we're excited to have something finally that I was like, yeah, okay, this represents.
And then online, was Sun Potions the only place you could really buy it online? Some of your products?
There's a few other places. Another great one is called Cap Beauty. And that's like for people who are into clean beauty as a, niche. They have a bunch of different brands that you could describe as clean beauty. Because as a whole, like, forget about obviously large scale skincare like products that you might find at a grocery store or something, but even luxury skincare products. And then unfortunately a good amount of quote unquote clean skincare products, I don't know like who defines these words, but for my standards, they're not something that I'd be interested in using. So Cat Beauty is a place where there's like a great collection of really clean brands and they sell some food products and stuff like that as well. So there's a couple places people could buy them online, but primarily they were buying them in person at some spas and hotels and some shops that sell the products. And then, honestly, directly through email and DM if somebody like found us directly. So
dude,
yeah, no website, no shop.
Well, I mean, I kind of bring up the website a little bit in jest, but also, housed within the website is obviously your full collection and events, live events. And as we're going to talk about primarily today, again, we had a hard time kind of defining it. Is it a mastermind? Is it a virtual kind of men's hang like we were doing here in person in Austin? It's kind of it's an amalgamation of all these things. But I would love to start with just your collection, because it is one of those things people do ask me, especially I have people on the podcast and just in general, like, what am I doing? Like, what are the products that I really use? And your collection, especially as it pertains to skincare, and for me, like your the summer solstice serum for my face is something I've used since I started. Since you and I became buddies, probably a little less than 2 years ago. Daily routine, I love it. And then the body serum is something that I was just telling you, I got this mosquito bite on the back of my neck. And for whatever reason, I get a really bad reaction to mosquito bites. And this thing was like a welt. I didn't catch it until later that night. I got home, put on some of the serum, and within a day and a half, there was zero swelling and it was, starting to heal. Dude, that's a 2-week process for me generally if I don't have anything to combat that. And in the event that I actually know that I had a couple of weeks ago, I had my whole elbow got eaten up. Didn't know it, but I could feel a little itching. Put it on there. Zero swelling, no itching. I mean, this shit is incredible. And I'm always wondering, like, how do we get this out to more people? Because more people need to know about it. My wife, as you know, she's prominently featured in the amazing video that is on the website, but she uses the wet and dry mask. She loves the salts for the bath, and she also uses both serums. What is more interesting to me is that my two sons both use it. You know, my senior in high school, it's the kind of the bedrock of his facial routine as he, you know, started to become more aware of his complexion and how he wanted it to look as it relates to the other girls in his grade, or I guess they don't have to be in his grade, but, and then my other son uses it because every now and then he gets some pretty dry skin from eczema, and it is the thing that helps that heal. So anyway, everyone, I mean, Hope was using it for a while. I don't know. She gets a bunch of stuff from TikTok, so who knows what she's using. But the rest of the family absolutely loves it. And so I'd love for you just to give people an idea of why these products are special.
To answer your question on how to get it out more, I think maybe we should get it on TikTok. It sounds like.
Dude, you may need to have someone get that on TikTok for you, because I know you're not going to do it.
No, I mean, that's probably the main answer as to, you know, why. Like, also we're a very small brand, you know, we make these things by hand. And so you're not going to, there's not going to be any point in our brand's trajectory when you like see us at Sephora or, you know, at some large scale, because we would have to change what we're doing, you know. It would be much more likely that you would see us sell our collection out and then, you know, wait till the end of the next growing season and start selling it again, hopefully at a larger scale, because we do grow nearly all of the ingredients in our entire collection. Like in the oils, for example, we don't grow the oils. We work with other people who, unlike, you know, what you could typically find either at the grocery store, or if you're like buying from wholesalers on the internet, you know, let's just say you're a skincare maker, ABC, and you're buying a bulk amount of olive or avocado oil. It's really rather hard to know where that oil came from. And then statistically speaking, it's actually hard to know that it's actually the oil that you're trying to buy, because there's a lot of fraud and cheaper oils that'll be used and blended or entirely in place of the oil it should be. And then, you know, it'll sometimes have, I think it's mandated to have a country of origin. And sometimes it'll say like 2 or more countries. It could be on different parts of the world, you know, it'd be like one in South America and one in Africa. And you're like, okay, so it's from these entire countries, you know? So we work with individual growers, and then we work with you know, depending on what their process is, we work right up to the bottle with them. So, you know, if the farmer's process is that they send it to this certified organic mill where they press the oil, well, we will send our own steel or glass containers directly to that mill for them to press right into it and you know, take it back home so that it never even has to touch plastic, which is just for convenience and breakage and all that stuff, the most common thing that would happen at that point. And then another one of our oils, for example, the lady custom presses it on demand on her biodynamic farm in California. She doesn't even make this oil commercially. She does have a beautiful biodynamic almond orchard, and she has the mill, she has the capabilities, she presses it, you know, so that's even fresher than you could ever imagine. So most oil that you find is like probably expired too, basically. It's just by the time it goes around the world and ends up on a wholesale shelf and then sold to a third party and then ends up wherever. So it's just a horse of a different color. So when you work with something that is so fresh, you know, right from the source, the shelf life on it is like blows your mind compared to what you're used to getting at the grocery store, where you think like 6-12 months later, your olive oil might smell a little rancid or something. Well, that's because it, you know, depending on how it was grown and pressed and how long it's been sitting there, and was it in plastic and all that kind of stuff. So other than that, we grow all the flowers, the things that are featured that get infused into the oil. And I think we probably talked about this in the past, but we use the sunshine and the moonshine to infuse the flowers into the oil, as opposed to like on a stove or any sort of artificial heat or pressure. And so when you have, you know, the next thing that differentiates is just the manner in which they're grown, which we talked about last time too, which is the biodynamic farming method. And let's just cut to the chase by saying you end up with a cleanliness and nutrient density of raw ingredients that is really substantially different from like commercially grown monoculture, even if organic counterparts. And so when you have the cleanest, most nutrient dense raw ingredients, and then you combine them in the most gentle and least invasive and slowest, process, you end up with a very high vitality product. I would say that's like the first thing that our products have is vitality. And so they're just very active in terms of how they interact with you. It feels like a living thing. And that's through applying this sort of lens of having complete sort of understanding of the whole process and making decisions that will try to lend towards that outcome of the highest quality, least sort of like, it's like, on the website video that you're referring to, I say it's like a chef, any good chef, they want the best ingredients and they want to get out of the way and not mess it up. And so I feel like that's what we've done is we've really kind of captured the vitality of these plants, which then at that point, we've selected some interesting plants, but frankly, it's like there was no rocket science to the plants we selected because they, two things. One, they grow really well on our farm in California. And so part of the biodynamic practice is communicating with the land. And so a form of nonverbal communication you could say is, well, these plants grow really well here. Maybe that's what we should make our products out of, right?
Yeah.
Just like looking at the land. So the main ingredient in our 3 different serums is wild St. John's wort, which just grows on that property once a year out in the wild. And all of a sudden there's this yellow wildflower that pops up and really captivated my attention. And we started infusing it. So that's where it started, was learning about wild St. John's wort. And then, the year after, I think it probably occurred to me, maybe we should try infusing a couple other things. We got a couple other things from the wild and made some other oil infusions. And then by the time we were really thinking about developing the hotel and thinking about programming for the future, we started thinking, oh my gosh, well, obviously those St. John's wort infusions we're making should be spa products. And lo and behold, now circling back, that all culminated with wildfires having us leave that property. And that is what sort of put an end to our on the ground surface reality level of our dream, which was developing a hotel on that property. That came to an end. And so that also was sort of the beginning of when we said, okay, these products that we've developed formerly for this hotel project, as opposed to people coming to the property to see this experience, this property, quote unquote, will now have to kind of go to the people through these products. And then you were mentioning our live events. That's kind of the genesis of our live events too, because just because we had those fires and we were no longer developing the hotel didn't mean that our actual dream, which was to live a life sort of inspired by nature connection and to Rumi, buddy, I love nature too, man. But
yeah, he's just giving you a woo woo.
Yeah, all right, go chill. Living that life is still sort of the essence of what I was after. You know what I mean? Just because this hotel project, quote unquote, burned down, basically that's what you can find through our product collection and through these live events is the type of programming we were originally excited to offer in that hotel experience. Which, yeah, sure, would have been a great hotel, but it's just also would have been, personally speaking, a very long and hard and difficult life of developing that hotel and living on that property. It was, with the natural events like wildfires, but just all sorts of like landslides in the winter and just managing 365 days a year of, a couple dozen employees and all the visiting guests who would come and all the broken toilets in the middle of the night and staffing issues and whatever. And, so from the moment of those fires till now, the surface level of my dream has changed from developing that hotel to, like you're saying, having this product collection, holding live events, the new men's group we're about to launch. All of that is kind of like, for me at its essence, still the same thing, the same exact kind of direction that I was heading on, even though on the surface, really everything did change, topsy-turvy.
For sure. I mean, and again, we go into that in depth in the episode with Eben, and so I'll make sure that that's linked in the show notes. But I'd love to hear just a quick kind of, here are some of the products, and this is, especially with the serums. I mean, the masks, we understand what those applications are, but what are some of the other applications for the different serums?
I mean, these products are sold as what you would call a cosmetic product. So that's for like, I don't know, beautifying yourself. They're used most commonly as like self-care products. And so I really mean that very generally, because if your skin is just feeling flawless or just normal, let's just say your skin is feeling average, you're not even going to notice it. You know what I mean? If it's your sort of status quo, if your skin has any sort of imbalance or dysbiosis, like you're saying, son has dry skin, or if all of a sudden you have like acne, or like you were saying you have bug bites, well, then you're going to notice it quite a lot. And so this is for daily use or regular use. It doesn't even have to be daily. I don't use our products necessarily daily. There's definitely days I forget, but many times a week I'm using pretty much most of our products. And it's just like, why do I drink high quality water? And why do I source the best quality ingredients to cook food for my family? I mean, I don't draw the line on the inside and the outside of my skin between like, I'm not looking to ingest things that I'm not looking to eat, basically, I would say. So all of our ingredients are whole foods, really. The least food-like thing is in the masks, I would say. There's a little clay, a little beeswax. They're actually kind of pretty edible, but everything else is, food that could have been in your salad. And so the ways people use them is like whatever they're going through. Because if, like I said, any sort of imbalance that you're experiencing and actually noticing your skin, the first question in our family, like, did you put some serum on it?
Yeah.
Because we've used it in hundreds of ways. And I've gotten feedback from people like eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, acne, fungal infections, sunburns, bug bites, cuts, rashes. I mean, any kind of thing. Yeah. And the reason is, that's what I was saying earlier. There's like no rocket science. I'm not totally surprised to hear what you're saying, because pretty much exclusively, besides being whole foods, grown at the highest and cleanest quality possible, intervened with in the most minimal ways, the least invasive ways possible, is that they're cure-alls ingredients in like folk traditions, whether it's Ayurvedic or Taoist or Northern European, all of these ingredients for the most part have millennia, if not hundreds of years of reported usage for a wide range of issues. And then when you have ingredients like that, which have been just around in kind of folk culture and traditional usage for a long time, there's also the benefit of there most likely being a lot of peer-reviewed science on it as well. So you could just type in, peer-reviewed topical benefit of any of these ingredients. Let's just say calendula or lavender. You're going to find the list of like every skin condition you've ever heard of in your life and 10 more you've never heard of. The wide range of, applicability to ingredients that are, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, rich in antioxidants, all the different plant constituent parts together in their whole form, like as an entourage. So for me, that means like the mystery of nature, because the alternative to that is extracting these ingredients through solvents and different, processes to have lab derived, isolated vitamin C or isolated, this plant constituent ABC. And, kind of like the thought process where vitamins that are isolated and extracted down might not be or at all sort of able to be assimilated in your body compared to finding those in natural foods, like a rich, wild food source or something like that. Same thing, applies to my thinking on this, is that these plants in their whole forms, grown with all the sort of mystery of what we don't even know about them, and then treated really delicately so they kind of maintain the integrity of that. Because you can imagine heating it up or pressurizing it in a couple hours to extract, a certain spectrum anyways of the available sort of medicinal properties of that plant versus our month-long process of doing it at very low temperature by comparison. And how, allowing it to more slowly unwind might preserve some of the more sort of delicate ends of that spectrum and widen the range of medicinal properties that we can extract from it. Kind of like raw foodists who maintain that their food has, higher nutrient preservation because it's never been heated up past a certain temperature. Like these things have never been heated,
What are the other, in like the serum, what are some of the other plants and flowers that are
the summer
involved?
solstice serum is all three of them start with wild St. John's wort. The summer solstice serum is German chamomile and Roman chamomile and Tulsi and wild yellow dock and gotu kola.
That's my favorite, by the way. Every morning I rub it in the hands, give it a nice smell, and then rub it all over. It's so good.
Yeah, I did it right before I came over. It was going to be on camera.
Yeah, you're beaming.
Yeah, be glowing. All three serums really are kind of interchangeable. Like if you were just going to get one, you could almost base it off of your scent because the summer solstice serum is definitely, sweet and the most mild, gently floral, definitely unisex too. Men and women, everybody likes it. The restorative body serum has a little bit of like an undertone of lavender to it that stands out. And
Sure.
so like that is, some people might resonate with that. And then the Ryokan serum, the third one, which we actually made for the Nobu Ryokan Hotel in Malibu, which was probably still is, but certainly still considered to be. But right when we started that partnership, they were announced as the #1 hotel in North America by Travel and Leisure. So it was a really cool opportunity for us. And that's like one of the example of the stockists on our website list. So that list was working pretty good for, for what it was. It was a good list. A lot of partners like sort of at that level. And that one is scented to sort of feel like their property in a sense. And so it's a rosemary, lemongrass, and clary sage scent that is blended and distilled on our farm. We distill those essential oils ourselves. And so that's, I could say, the most scented, and summer solstice serum is the least scented. And all three of these are grown on, the same farm, infused in the same ways, featuring some of the same oils. The summer solstice is 100% olive oil. The restorative body serum is half olive and half avocado. And the Ryokan serum is half olive and half sweet almond. And, but if you liked all three of them, then like you were saying, the summer solstice serum, people mostly apply to their face, the restorative body serum to really anywhere on their body. And then the Ryokan serum, more for like ritual and meditation and grounding. It also serves like a very similar purpose. You could just sort of apply it to your face or body wherever you want, but the scent and the aromatherapeutic benefit of it is just really potent. And so people are using it, if they're using all three, I would say they're using it for like, alertness, whether it's before a Zoom or a meditation, and then in our family, we actually use it before we go kind of hiking and stuff, because those three essential oils are actually excellent insect repellents, interestingly enough. So yeah, we'll put that on before we go out in nature. Definitely seems to keep the bugs away, but we're not using bug spray in general. So
yeah,
this is just like, I'm saying, if I'm going for a hike and I'm going to grab one of these serums before I go out, I would grab that one because it has that added little benefit.
Well, and I love the hydrating, you call it hydrating essence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Bowen's my senior has gone through a couple bottles of that. It's like, bro, you really dig this stuff, huh?
Yeah. So that's the byproduct of making essential oils. So when you put the plant material into the still and then you pass the steam through it, and then it goes through cold water to condense the steam, it comes out as little droplets. The droplets you capture in a glass jar. And then when it cools, the essential oil will rise to the top. And then everything else is basically water, but on a parts per billion level, it's just totally infused with essential oil. And so it has all the same aromatherapeutic benefits, but it's in water which is, entirely safe to just sort of apply liberally. Whereas essential oils, it's, I don't know what percentage of it is, but by eyeball, it looks like much less than 1%, like might be 0.25% of 1%, comes out as essential oil, like enough to like pipette off the top and have a few milliliters sometimes,
Yeah.
So it's really potent, concentrated, and rare and difficult to produce in terms of how much plant material would be required. And it's also the most commonly thing used in quote unquote clean beauty. So like it's got to be one of those things, like they say this about organic cotton too, but it's got to be one of those things where there's like far more or essential oils being sold than are really being produced. There's got to be a high level of fraud and adulteration with fragrance and otherwise, for these quote unquote, clean ways of adding scent, which they're most likely, just statistically speaking, grown on large scale industrial monoculture farms. So that's just, cause like 1% of global agriculture is, maybe on a different survey, you'll see 2, 3, 4%, but some very low percentage is organic in the first place. And of that, 95 to 99 is going to be industrial organic. So it's just the idea that you could have these ingredients, which on their own, the names of them, like I said, they're very common. They're not going to, there's going to be a lot of skincare products out there with calendula and lavender and these different products in it. Not that many with wild St. John's wort, but most of our other ingredients are rather common. So it's the manner in which they're grown, which in our case, is close to non-existent. When we try to, because we need to find other farmers and wild harvesters who grow or have access to these ingredients too, because like the year of the fires, everything burnt down. Other years, certain crops don't turn out. We're in the process of relocating entirely to Texas. We as a family have moved here, a couple of years ago, but the farm itself will also eventually be sold one day out in California. And we're, going to start a new garden here in Texas, but the garden in Texas won't be able to produce all the same ingredients as the garden in California. And so we've had to, over the years, expand and find other small growers and herbalists and various people who have access to ingredients of a similar, in some cases, even higher quality than we were able to produce. And so it's been really awesome to meet these people, but I tell you that it's not easy to find ingredients of this quality unless you're growing them yourselves in this way. So I don't think that there's very many others that could match the, what ultimately would be the efficacy of the product. Because like in this type of product, as opposed to, what's more commonly advertised, which is like sort of a medically described product with particular claims, backed by dermatologists and, a hot new trending ingredient of some kind that you'll then see in every product that comes out across like the category. It's basically the opposite of that. So it's a general approach to health and well-being where like all boats rise in the high tide. That's sort of our approach to farming. And that's sort of our approach to the product line as well, which is like, they're so interchangeable. You know what I mean? Like you're putting on the serum one day, you're using a mask the next day, you're spraying the hydrating essence, occasionally throughout the day. It's a pretty small collection, actually, especially if you're not using all 3 serums. There's 8 products in total. So another one that your wife loves is the bath salts.
Yeah.
And then the last one that everybody loves, the only product we haven't mentioned, is the lip treatment, which is called Honey Kiss. And men in particular, again, like I think because men are just so not used to using products like these that somehow, I don't know if it's because I'm a man and I'm out there talking about it and they heard about, I don't know exactly why, but men are just like, they say what you say, like I don't really use that much products. I use this every day. And so that's like the whole body at that point. We've got the lips, we've got the face, we've got the body, we got the mist, we got the bath salts. We don't need anything else. And it really replaces, if somebody is like more commonly a woman, but really just in general, if somebody's kind of a skincare person, our products could sometimes replace like 5 or 10 sort of products in their arsenal, because of that general nature to them. So you could use it, Somersault serum to remove makeup, and then all the sort of different first aid type of applications that obviously we don't make claims about, but as we said, anecdotally, that's what people have been using it for. And like your daily glow up, like you and I were just saying, like before you're going to go see people.
Yeah.
I mean, people ask me all the time who don't know, what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, that's a call to action for everybody. Go behere.com.
Yeah. Be Here Farm.
beherefarm.com. Shop the products. I love them. You've done a good thing there, but let's shift. I want to talk about, some of the live events, and in particular, Be Here Man that you're launching here with Edmund. What's his last name? I'm blanking on it.
Edmund Knighton is, what we're calling our psychologist in residence. He's helping me facilitate a 12-week men's group, is what we've been saying. But when you asked me downstairs, what's it called? Is it a men's group or whatever? We've been calling it a men's group, but it's definitely not necessarily the same format as any men's group that I've been offered in the past. And, I'll be honest, I wasn't really attracted to men's work in the past either. Just
why is that?
I think in an unexamined way, like I could think about it now for the first time, but I just naturally. Well, first of all, for the 10 years before I moved to Texas, I was living a pretty hermetic lifestyle. I was on the mountain, literally on a mountaintop, mostly by myself, focusing on developing this hotel. And if I was interacting with somebody, which was actually, when I say by myself, there were a lot of people around working on this project too. If I was interacting with somebody, it's pretty much about this project. So that's sort of, I don't know, I wasn't ever naturally attracted to it. And then when I moved here and I met you and I started hanging out with you and the guys on Wednesdays, that was like, quote unquote, I pretty, other than other like fraternal organizations, I've been in like my lacrosse team and alumni organizations and stuff. Like that was the first quote unquote men's group that I'd been a part of. And then I was just laughing because at one point I mentioned to somebody on one of these nights that it was a men's group, and they're like, "Is that what you've been telling your wife you do on Wednesdays?"
Yeah.
Because yes, men's group does sort of conjure up maybe a more formal sharing process or other sort of agenda, whereas this is a free form, hang of sorts where plenty of real issues have been unpacked and come up, but more or less it's a loose hang.
Yeah, let's go gather. We'll play ping pong or pool, play some instruments, and whatever's coming up for guys. It could be with the whole group. It could be a couple guys up in the kitchen that are hanging and sharing something that's they're working through. It's very informal, and so you don't have to have this like, oh, I gotta come with some stuff this week, and it's just a nice way to offer support to one another in a way that's just so, I don't know, it's so chill, and everybody kind of would look forward to it.
Well, like coming off the mountain and moving to Texas, obviously I knew a couple people, but I really didn't know anyone down here. And so going from not really socializing with anybody, except for long distance relationships that I'd maintained from before I moved out there, to at a minimum once a week meeting with this group of guys, it was definitely a noticeable thing in my life. And so, yeah, in my head, it was a men's group. And so as a part, like the brand Be Here is basically like an effort to share what's been transformational in my own life, which primarily is nature connection. But if you unpack that, it's really about sort of self-connection and just connection in general. Because when you really connect with nature, you ultimately find yourself in nature and nature in yourself. And sort of the separation between the two sort of fades away. And that's the same for good relationships and the container of a men's group where there's like this sort of, to use a common phrase, safe space to just like, I feel like myself at the men's, like when we gather, but I also feel like I want to be an even better version of myself. So there's something inspiring about the environment of like a bunch of guys getting together for some sort of common purpose. And so, yeah, I was just like thinking about how much like, nature connection, which the end of that thread is sort of our product line and our live events, just how the connection of that men's group was actually, a inspiring thing in my life for sure, especially because I was also like, my whole dream had just sort of shifted so much. Like we were not developing the hotel. We were not living on the property. We were relocating to a new place. So much was feeling sort of weird. And so the men's group, turned out to be this inspiring thing that kind of just helped me on my path. I think more quickly than I would have if I had like stayed in a bubble and not been inspired by the interactions that I was, seeing at the men's group. And so when, I don't remember who it was, laughed at me at the idea that we were even in a men's group, I then started thinking like, well, what am I getting value from here? Like, if this isn't a men's group, like what is going on, and it was just being around, like in this case, you've gathered a group of very successful, likable, solid guys who are easy to be inspired by. And so I knew that if you're in a room of men of that caliber, you're likely to enrich yourself in a variety of ways, at all levels, like it just felt like I could feel that was happening just from going to play ping pong and just like being in the room. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the men's group, the origin kind of became like how to create that sort of feeling and offer it to men who don't have access to a room like that. And I figured there must be a lot of them because I felt like it was an exceptional space that I was in. And I felt like it was sort of a rare opportunity to, have a group like that. And so the first thing, months ago, before Edmund and I started coming up with, like the arc of the men's group. Like,
because you've been sitting with this for a while. I know we've had conversations, I almost feel like last spring where you were kind of conjuring up what does this even look like? And I'm sure it's gone through a few iterations.
I just felt like I was getting value out of, what I was doing here with you guys, even though it was almost nothing. Like, that's how loose it was.
Yeah.
We were just like, just being with the guys was enough.
It's totally like a men's hang, but had strong men's group undertones.
The value of that, coupled with the fact that I don't really find value in kind of the opposite of that, which is a much more formal men's group where you're sort of just like going around a circle, maybe sharing your problems that are present in the moment. And that there's, of course, like if you're really present with that, it could be heart wrenching and opening and just like inspiring in all sorts of ways, but it's not how I'd want to spend my Wednesdays. And so there's something much more fun and approachable about this quote unquote loose hang and just being around guys like that. So basically, long story short of it, I started to think about who would be willing to, stand in for a session and sort of be one of those guys in the room as I gathered guys for this men's group that I was starting to sort of brainstorm on with Edmund. And so Paul Check, you, Eben Britton, Laird Hamilton, Alex Gray, and then my brother Jason, who most listeners of your show would maybe have already met. I feel like he had an episode come out.
Yeah,
here, right?
For sure.
Yeah, at least one. And everyone else on the list is probably pretty recognizable. I mean, like they're just, outstanding men of achievement in their fields, like for decades longer, and then like in Laird Hamilton's case, for example, like outperforming peers for decades. And so these are men who are sort of, excelling in their stated dream. And that for me ties back to like Paul Chek's concept of the dream line, which is really just having a dream in life as sort of your North Star. It's what gets you, over the gravity of your daily challenges. And so even if those challenges are really big, like a wildfire burns everything down, I was able to maintain this dream I had of living a lifestyle of nature connection, and everything kind of on the ground just morphed to keep going in that direction, even though it looked like it had all burned down. So the program is sort of oriented around the guys identifying or clarifying and qualifying their stated dream in life, which makes the program, which will run for 12 weeks, be really individual for each person who comes. Because everybody's going to be in a, somebody might be stuck, and like an addict, and really struggling. And somebody might be trying to like optimize their business and their family relations, but they're feeling pretty awesome and they love mindfulness work and they want to dive deep with some guys. So it's really a wide open, invitation for men who want to be in a room with these, what we're calling our visiting masters, to ask questions on how they're doing what they're doing. And so we're going to meet with the visiting masters every other week. And then every other week is what we call an internal session, which will be, hosted by me, facilitated by Edmund, and will be where more traditional men's work things will go on. It's hoping to be about 30 guys in the group. And so let's say 20 to 40, but approximately 30. And basically the structure of each internal session would be that whatever the topic at hand is, like, for example, when Paul Chek comes in as our first visiting master, he's going to be giving a presentation on the dream line, which, what we're just talking about. And so the next week, as you've now gone home and you've identified and clarified your dream, you're now going to present it to the group for, it's only a 90-minute session. So basically, if everybody was sharing around the group, it might get a little boring and it might take a little bit too long time. So basically, the format is that everyone will break up into pairs. And that is then, some people don't even like speaking in front of a group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now we're all in pairs and each partner is going to have 10 minutes to really just, share whatever they have. 10 minutes of talking is a pretty good amount of time. At which point the group comes back together and your partner who just listened to you for 10 minutes will represent the essence of your share to the group in a pretty quick recap. And so we're constantly going to be staying, in touch with the group through these sharings, but also it's like the most important thing is that each man's actually individually going to be on their own course, with the support of the group and really the accountability that comes from kind of, sharing these things in the group, and inevitably support that comes, actual support from other guys in the group who are probably going to be helpful in achieving your dream through,
well, I think that's a great format too, because I think a number like 30, I just think about when I did a couple things that were similar, over an 8-week period. And, I think I had 12 or 13, and then I had close to 20, and that number works really well. And I think that there's a real benefit to breaking up, really drilling down and having, that's plenty of time to really share your stated dream, to work through it with your partner, and then maybe kind of reconsider it, and then vice versa. And then to come to the group and share that. And I love the idea that your partner shares yours so that it is concise and everybody gets to hear it and kind of move through that, because it's important to be heard. It's very easy when sharing your own piece to kind of get bogged down in more of the story. And, I think it's a really a great way to be able to manage a group of 30, which is going to be intimate. And, I think for people who are listening, I sure hope this goes out before Paul does this episode, because there may not be spots left. You've got quite a list of visiting masters coming in. And I think that's amazing. I'd love to hear kind of with each one, like what is it that you thought they would bring to the group in their kind of area of expertise or mastery?
So some of them are more specific and some of them are more general. Like Paul is really coming in with a piece of his core curriculum, which is the deam-line. And so it'll almost be a presentation, whereas the general format is more of a conversation and a Q&A, you could say, but I'll be asking the questions based on questions that the guys will have submitted to me that week leading up to them. So,
almost like a live podcast, in a sense.
Yeah. And then also the opportunity at the end for new people to just ask straight up questions from the group. But let's say that, you were one of the guys in the group as opposed to one of the visiting masters and you had submitted questions to me. I'll say, this next question came from Cal, and, maybe you pop up onto the screen to clarify as needed, or at least the person can talk sort of more directly to you. Just the opportunity to even have that conversation with the guys that we've brought together is something that is, potentially once in a lifetime for somebody who's, really fascinated in one of these fields. But to answer your question, so Paul, the deam-line, which every 2-week cycle, the group as it relates to our inner sessions are going through what are called the 6 steps of mastery, which are some exercises that come from Rudolf Steiner. And so it's basically every 2 weeks, we're going to be focusing on these different exercises, which occur in sequence and then are harmonized. In the last one, you balance the 5 exercises prior. And so it sort of sounds like simple and maybe even uninteresting, except for the fact that when you actually get into it, these words do get defined in ways that are not, I think what, normally comes to people. For example, the first exercise is called, thinking exercise or refinement of thinking. And it's like most of the day we can't, we're not even aware of the fact that thoughts are flooding through our mind. It's completely uncontrollable, avalanche of thoughts, even sometimes, if not commonly, during mindfulness practice.
Sure.
And so this exercise is basically to pick up a rather uninteresting object that you choose randomly in your life. And you could do the same one every day, for this period. We'll be doing it for 2 weeks at a time. So you pick up the object, something that you're actually not attached to in any way, and you just think of a fact about it, a true statement. And then you connect in your mind with your own willpower to stay on track. Every sequential logical thought or fact you can think about the paperclip or whatever it is that you're holding for 5 minutes, just a train of thoughts that you specifically choose on this topic. And it's pretty difficult at first.
It sounds like it, dude.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody's listening thinks that doesn't sound difficult or it does. But
oh my God.
In my experience, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
And over time, less so. And an ability to, have control over your thinking power certainly arises after a period of time, might be a month or 2 or 3, because you can continue this. Let's call this exercise 1. You can continue 1 as you go into 2, 3, 4, and 5, because ultimately exercise 6 is a balancing of all of them. And so perfectly encouraged to just, even though now, move on to exercise 2, that you can continue doing this thinking exercise throughout the day. It's only going to strengthen, what you're taking away from it. And the next one is the will exercise. And so thinking, feeling, and willing is like our major concepts in Steiner's worldview of the human. And so the will exercise is similar to the thinking in the sense that you want to do something that you're not really attached to, or it's not like life or death if it happens or not, because you're taking the initiative to go do this thing. And so just to stick with the paperclip example, it might be I move the paperclip from the left side of my desk to the right side of my desk every single day at a chosen time. And as silly as it sounds, over time, the end goal of that is a feeling of strengthening around initiative to take action on things. And then combined with clear thinking from the first exercise, you're now sort of, got a really good foundation for the next three, which are really feeling exercises. And the third one, so now into week 6 of the men's group, is the equanimity exercise, which is sort of a buffer against our natural tendency to swing between extreme states.
I don't know anything about that.
Right. So like in, for our live events, what would be great is if people were inspired to live their life in some ways that they picked up on the retreat, because we were presenting a balanced, holistic sort of lifestyle, with movement and clean food and access to nature and stimulating thought and, on and on. What would be less ideal is if they, were binge drinking and then, felt terrible and then took a detox vacation for a week and then went back to binge drinking. Not nearly as sustainable, obviously. And so it's really, this exercise might sound odd to people because it's like, oh, I want to feel my emotions, but this exercise is meant to just be an exercise, not to necessarily be a way of life. What becomes a way of life is the result of this exercise, which is a sense of calmness and equanimity, which is really that, to practice that and to get that feeling sense, and to apply it to your thinking and, clarified thinking and willing abilities, is when you're feeling an extreme emotion, like extreme happiness, to just sort of like in the yin yang symbol, how there's the dot of the white and the dot of the black in either side. It's just sort of like bring a dot of the polar opposite into the experience. So just to like be aware of deep sorrow as you're feeling this extreme state of happiness, or vice versa. If you're, some awful tragic news, to like just have a dot of that extreme joyfulness, or any extreme sort of emotions. And that's to cultivate equanimity. It's not necessarily because you don't want to feel your emotions. It's sort of has an endpoint. Like an end goal. Yeah,
well, it's easy. I'll speak from my own experience that when things are going really well and something quote unquote great happens, to think that there's nothing else in the world. It's just this, and vice versa. When something really challenging is happening, it's almost like there's this tunnel vision on, this is it. This is my entire life right now. And to lose the sight and perspective that this is how I'm feeling about this thing right now, but there's so much that's actually happening in this moment with the rest of my life. And I found that just that practice of taking a deep breath, zooming out, and realizing that, the example of things aren't going well or they're really challenged, like, okay, actually everything in my life right now is fine. This particular thing is presenting, a real challenge, and allow space for the rest of everything to come in. And I think I love that this is part of the practice, because it's too easy to get sucked into both of those extremes.
Yeah, I think that the goal, at least as much as I understand it, would be that there's sort of that's like the hammer of the situation, but there's subtle undernotes of it too. It's like you might feel those rushes of joy and sorrow in a way more intensely in the moment if you were not practicing this exercise. But I think that you might have a more subtle and sort of deeper emotion ultimately after having practiced this exercise. It wouldn't be like an avoidance of that emotion by any stretch. It's like an enriching of it. And so that's the fourth or the third.
Yeah, third.
Yeah, equanimity. The fourth is positivity. So it's like having a positive attitude, kind of the same thing. It's like a grain, even in the face of something kind of overwhelmingly unpositive sounding,
Yeah.
Like a criminal has like a grain of goodness in him.
Yeah, there's some
redemptive quality. And so that basically, the opposite is to like critique and judge everything, which is sort of our natural autopilot. But to like have that positive outlook allows us to ultimately, over a period of practice, to open up our connection with things in our environment around us more, as opposed to cutting ourselves off from it through like critique and judgment. So that's sort of like the hidden medicine at the end of the positivity exercise.
Dude, that practice, just as, I would say that is something that was somewhat new to me in the last 5 to 6 years of really being able to see, I don't necessarily want to call it a silver lining, but that there is balance in in people in particular, that this guy is he's not just a motherfucker. Like, there are some positive qualities, and it kind of humanizes that person. And it also just, it expands me into just seeing things, almost like more for how they are versus so wrapped up in the emotion of how I may have felt wronged or whatever. But it's been just, it almost comes back to that equanimity where it just balances the extremes. And it's been, as important as anything that I've learned. And something that I guess right now I could probably practice a little bit more. I feel like I've been a little bit outside of that, that kind of mindset, but I think it's incredibly valuable.
That's the funny thing about these exercises, is that like, you've had a lot of exposure to different healing modalities and, all sorts of Western and non, technologies, ancient and modern, and these, really simple sounding concepts like refining our thinking and initiative of action and feeling, equanimity, positivity. And the next one is openness, but feeling these things like as a foundational need to whatever it is that we're doing at that moment. Yeah. It's really easy to lose track of them. It's almost so simple. You think not to have to think about it even, it's like too simple, but that's the same as nature connection. It's like too simple to really put your eyes on and like investigate, like, yet it's the underlying root disease of our time, like, and the medicine of our time, conversely, like there's just no Western disease that isn't underlied by, our disconnection from Mother Nature in some way. I mean, in my layman's observation.
Sure. Well, and I think about, having access to that type of, I guess it's thinking and feeling, but with your partner, when there's a conflict, or with your kids, and that's going to happen, like to just be able to balance that out and not get sucked into the potential shit show that it feels like.
Yeah, both the equanimity would be helpful too.
Yeah.
Equanimity and positivity would both be helpful.
For sure.
And like, this isn't Steiner's words, but that was sort of my picture, like of the yin yang, like just a dot too. It's not asking too much.
Yeah.
Like he's not saying you have to like say the criminal is the saint, although maybe he is, because in Steiner's worldview, like, and maybe others, but the spiritual world is a lot of times sort of the opposite. Like you're over guiding, you're like your highest self version in the spiritual world is in his worldview, a feminine guided being, whereas a female would have like a male guardian angel overwatching them. And so, much like a death here, becomes a birth there. So it's sort of like the opposite. It's like, It's like the show, it's like that show on Netflix, the Underworld,
Wait, what show?
You know what I'm talking about? Come on, Stranger Things. Yeah.
Like I watched a few of those episodes. Yeah. It was decent. It just wasn't my thing.
No. But it's this whole concept of just sort of like being a reflection.
What other shows are you watching?
Kind
of kidding, but
take that one offline.
I'm curious
I'm sure
afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We got some good ones. The funny thing that in this like essay of Steiner actually just talking about these exercises, that he doesn't give anecdotes for like any other ones, but in the positivity one, he gives an anecdote. I think it's a Persian like folk story about Jesus Christ walking down the road with some of his disciples, and they come across a like a very decayed dog, like a dog deep into decomposition, like half its body, just like, maggots. Everybody turns away in disgust, and Jesus is looking at it thoughtfully and says, "My, what beautiful teeth this animal has." So that's the anecdote he gave for the positivity exercise, like finding that.
That's interesting. I like that
grain of positivity. And just to get serious about it. So he's more connected in that sense. Everyone else turned away in disgust, not disconnecting themselves from their environment. So it's meant to be ultimately like, if you practice the exercise for a period of time, you might start to feel a real openness of yourself to things around you. And then that's actually like the next exercise is openness, which is like the flexibility to consider something totally novel may occur even during, totally routine things like brushing your teeth, or that's the practice anyways, is to like in those moments of like commuting to work and getting into the car and brushing your teeth to look for and be open to something completely, unique occurring. And I don't know, I guess it's sort of a, to diffuse, autopilot a little bit. We now have these refined thinking and willing and feeling capabilities. So now we're, diffusing autopilot a little bit with the openness. And then also like the positivity is sort of, the last exercise was sort of energetically like streaming outward into the world. You're connecting yourself out into the world. And this one is kind of, you're letting things in, you're open to new things and things are streaming in towards you. And yeah, so that's the 5. The 6th one is balancing them all together, practicing them in harmony. And so that will occur over the course of these 12 weeks in 2-week cycles. Of course, people are able to continue doing that for months and months if they connect with it. But, if you participate in the program, you at least have gone through those 6 levels of mastery brought by Steiner, which is really profound, and according to him should underlie any other tradition of esoteric or consciousness development or vision or imagination, really any sort of self-mastery of any kind. He thinks that these are the real 6 foundational exercises to have, as a part of you. So I thought that was a cool, basically as an undercurrent of the entire course. And then you asked the question is like, well, what are these 6 men, the visiting masters, bringing? So they're kind of charted along these exercises. So in the thinking exercise, Paul's coming in, we're establishing our dream and our dream line. The next guest, we're moving into Laird Hamilton. So now we're on week 3 and we're into the will exercise, the initiative of action. And so guys are taking action on their dream. We're now taking action in the real world, doing something to, so as an example of that, like when I was leaving the property and I realized that I had been a hermit for like 10 years, but now the hotel wasn't going to happen and all these people weren't going to be coming to flood in through my doors. And I was going to sit there on my little chair and be the special guy who, welcomed them in, whatever my imagination was. So I was working with my brother on some exercise. I think it was a tarot reading that he was doing for me. And it was basically like, well, what are you going to do to put this into action? Because the exercise showed that I got to let go of being this hermit and I got to move more into, sharing our teachings out in the world as opposed to expecting people to come in to see the hermit in the cave. And so I reached out to Paul that day and I asked him, hey, might it be possible to come talk about my experience on your podcast? I had never been on a podcast before. And so that was basically my action step of putting my dream, into forward progress. So that's kind of what will, hopefully the guys will be inspired by Laird's talk. Guys are taking action on their dream line as we move into equanimity. The third guest, I think, is Ebb. And so this is, about finding balance, which certainly he's going to have a lot to share about because he lived like a really extreme, warrior archetype and found himself broken down and rebuilt himself through finding balance, basically. And then we move into positivity, and Alex Gray will be the guest. The thing I want to talk about Alex, I think it will be easy to relate to positivity, but the thing I want to talk about Alex is like, because not everyone in the room's a painter, including myself, is like the idea that the art spirit, this being of art that sort of flows through. And much like, you'd interview a musician, they'd be like, yeah, these songs just come to me, when I'm in an open state or whatever. So like there's this art spirit that is in the plant, there's beauty everywhere. We're surrounded by art and beauty. And so I just want to personally, and I'm excited to hear what the guys want to talk to Alex about too, but I personally kind of want to talk to Alex about like how to relate to and sort of feel and live a life in relationship with this art spirit that so clearly he has tremendous access to. And then so as we move in, so positivity and then openness, then you're the guest. And so openness for me, and, being open to new ideas, I thought tied perfectly together with unlearning, and your forthcoming book, which I, read and know all about. So like everything that you share in there, I think will be just super relevant. In particular, in your case, like, you had to let go of something, like you had a career in finance and you could have continued doing that and making a bunch of money, and you change your life completely. And so it's like, there's sometimes a letting go of things that's required for letting in new things. And so I was kind of interested to talk to you about that, especially when the thing you're letting go of kind of defines you.
Yeah.
At that moment anyways, too. So like all the more like there might be guys in the group who not only need to let go of things, but they might be defined by the things they need to let go of. And I think that could be, profound kind of chat to have.
Yeah. And you think about it, certainly in the context of Eben being a big time football player, but, I see it with a lot of, I guess the extreme example is these former pro athletes. I mean, not only have they been playing for their pro career, but their whole life, they've been the best at that to make it to the pros. So they've always been that particular person. And then one day it's over and there's no real way to prepare for that. It's a completely new experience for them. And, I have plenty of friends who have been through that experience, and everyone deals with it differently. Some people try not to deal with it. And I get it. It's hard. And so I think kind of getting in the weeds with that, I think is really important, because even though those are obvious kind of examples for people to relate to, they can see, I think we can all see within ourselves, how am I identified to this thing? How am I really attaching to that identity? What comfort do I have in that? And then like, what is it holding me back from? Holy shit. And I think that's where the real juice is when we can see that, yeah, it's really cool to be whatever, a trader, successful trader, but like, if that's all I am, then I'm completely closed to anything else that's coming in that's saying, hey, pick me. This is something that, would be, you'd be well suited for.
Yeah. So I experienced it too. In my sort of blind pursuit of trying to develop the hotel, I wasn't open to any other sort of experience or some even aspects of a normal social life and stuff like I was saying earlier. So, it's not only in like the nightmare phase too. It's like that was in my high dream phase. I thought I was living my dream,
Yeah.
and yet living my dream also has the trade-off of cutting me off from certain things. So it's just nice to have awareness of that. And then, so the last one, balance. My brother will be the last guest. And, partially, the last session we're allowing to sort of live in where the the group we're just being very open to the fact that the group might take on a slightly different direction than, we've architected for it based on the needs of the group. And so the last one is sort of like loosely focused on abundance, which is my brother's, program is called the Abundance Archetype. And so abundance meaning like a synthesizing of all areas of your life to feel, much more than financial abundance, but all levels of, social abundance, family abundance, professional abundance, really whatever your stated dream is. So tying your stated dream, going through that whole process of refining our thinking and willing and feeling capabilities, in concert with the visiting masters coming in and lending their expertise, the internal sessions where the guys are really going to be able to go deep with each other. And every guy will get paired off as well with like an accountability partner for just like 2, 3, 4, 5-minute check-ins throughout the week, once a week, just a phone call to self-address anything that's coming up, workshop with each other, anything that's coming up on what would be like the work of that week. And so like coming out of Paul, we'll be defining our dream, coming out of his Dreamline talk. Coming out of Alex, we're going to be doing like an art experiment, which sort of embodies some of the things that have occurred the few weeks leading up to it. And so whatever the work of the week is, the guys will have a partner to also just check in with each other on that. And then every other Sunday, we're doing our Sunday sessions, we're calling it. So we have the internal sessions and then the Sunday sessions. And those are basically experiences. Like Eb's going to lead an ebb and flow. We're having Lois Laney come in, who's the founder of the Restorative Breathing Center, to teach some guys some simple tricks to optimize their cranial nerves and sort of create structure for their nervous system to respond to things in real time effortlessly without trauma from past events. And we have Dr. Teshna coming in, who's an NET practitioner, neuro-emotional technique, which is sort of like a clearing of unconscious blocks that would prevent us from, moving forward on our dream lines. So like those Sunday sessions are happening also in concert with the visiting masters, in concert with the arc of these 6 levels of mastery, so that they're all kind of reinforcing each other. Like the visiting master, we're going to be tying into the work that we're doing. The work of the week is obviously the work that we're doing. The visiting experts on these Sunday sessions are going to be enhancing the work that we're already doing. And there's a few more that, guys can check out at beherefarm.com to learn more about it. But that's the quote unquote men's group.
Dude, I love it. Man, I can just speak briefly on Dr. Teshna. I was fortunate enough to get connected with her through you and through some pretty challenging times. Her guidance and wow, she's incredible. And it's kind of mind blowing how she's able to really dissolve a lot of these charges and kind of stories that we, kind of tell ourselves. So I'm grateful for that. So I'm glad that she's going to be a part of it. She's awesome.
Yeah. And like, it'll be a unique experience for me to do it in a group setting. Like I do it with my wife and my daughter. So small group, but this will be like, there's something that will be, like even if we were doing a individual as the example, like you might find some takeaways just from watching somebody else go through the experience. But Dr. Teshna has a way of facilitating just to the group as a group experience for everyone's obviously going through their individual thought process on it. There's definitely some feeling involved in it, but it sort of happens automatically almost. Just by listening to her guided cues is sort of how the process works.
What are you most excited about with this?
About the men's group?
Yeah.
Man, just the idea that it's coming together, frankly. I mean, all the visiting masters and the experts for the Sunday sessions all agreeing to participate. Because I mean, these people aren't for hire, and if they were, you wouldn't want to afford them. You know what I mean? Like, so all of these people are participating because they thought it was a worthwhile ask when I ask them. And so I think that's the thing I'm most excited about, is to have created a space that the visiting masters are contributing to, and that I know will be really meaningful for the guys. And then also to have spent the last like 6-12 months just kind of coming up with the actual architecture of it, like the 6 levels of mastery, and kind of tying it into the stories and the personalities of the visiting masters, and tying that into, and kind of having it be our North Star as Paul's dream line, all of these things, and then Edmund, my co-facilitator on it, is, I know you asked me what I'm most excited about. I'm giving you like 30 things, but
perfect.
He's like a real expert on Steiner's work, first of all, but he's also a clinical psychologist, and he's a somatic psychologist. So he has a lot of expertise in total nonverbal, therapy. And so each week we're also going to get an embodiment practice, which will be like a very basic hand gesture or slow body movement or slow walking in a particular way. Each of these will be associated with the work. Like the thinking exercise will have a thinking embodiment practice. The openness exercise will have an openness embodiment practice. And these embodiment practices, the visiting masters, like all of these things, like the little individual streams that kind of make up the larger stream of this program as a whole, I think each one of them would be worthwhile in its own right. I would just get in a room with the visiting masters. I would just learn about the 6 levels of mastery. I would just go get a sound healing from Dopro, a session with Dr. Teshna, an ebb and flow with Ebb. And I would just, meet with 30 guys who are all motivated to achieve their highest dream in life, and want to support each other in doing it. Like all of those individual aspects of it, I think are worthwhile in their own right. And so kind of like our products, we have like these 7 cure-alls. We kind of have woven them together into the summer solstice serum and the other products in the collection. That's sort of how I feel. I feel like these are all just inherently, obviously very valuable opportunities for guys to connect with, and to have all of them, thoughtfully woven together is what I would hope will be a recipe for, positive dynamic change for the guys who join.
Yeah, I agree. I think it sounds amazing. Do we have, is there any special Unlearn offer for my listeners?
Always.
Yes,
yeah.
Sir.
Let's put it on, let's call it like Unlearn 2024 as a code. And yeah, that thing can live all year long. You just interact with us too, because there's so much, it's hard to say what that, like on the products, for example, I would love to give a 15% discount to any Unlearn listeners, but for all the other things, they're so sort of individually priced, and they're sold through like interviews, basically. If people are interested in the live event or the men's group, there will be information online at BeHereFarm.com, of course, but that information will end with you scheduling a FaceTime with me and us just talking about it.
That's a great way to do it.
So at that point, if somebody's telling me that they're using the Unlearn code, I'll certainly honor it in the best way that I can, whatever the offering is. The events are, we didn't really discuss them, but
let's wrap with that. Let's talk about the 2 events.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're also on the website. People could check them out, but we basically, you can't just take the summer solstice serum, as great as it is, and put it on your face and then like eat Doritos and lie around all day, So you gotta, it's gotta just be a part of an otherwise holistic lifestyle. And so the events are about bringing, our passions to life in compelling ways, like we would have done at the hotel. However, doing it wherever we're really called to, which is just so exciting. So last year we did a 4-night river trip in Hell's Canyon on the Snake River with myself and Eben and Dr. Nathan Riley and our friend Dopro, who's a musician and sound healer and yogi. And we're doing a repeat of that. So we're doing the summer solstice Hell's Canyon run again. We're calling it the Solar Return, if you're checking it out on the website. And I mean, that is just, this year is an extra night. So we're doing 5 nights on the river instead of 4. And I mean, you've been on safari in Africa, there's some places you go that you're just hundreds of thousands of miles or in this case, acres really, but in Africa, probably miles, thousands of miles sometimes, just out in nature, just so far away from a plug or anything electronic or any cell phone or Wi-Fi signal of any kind. And it's, oh my God, it's just the best being out there. And so we whitewater raft all day long. And then when we hit camp, we have me, Eben, and Dopero leading various program elements around self-care and yoga and chanting and music, and obviously a ton of just time to relax and camp. And all the BS about camping is taken care of by the river company. So in addition to the Be Here staff, there's the river company staff who's in charge of our safety and getting us, all the gear and actually operating the boats and setting up all the tents and preparing all the food, along with Chef Aaron Goldstein, who is our local friend here in Austin, who's a Michelin trained chef and really dialed in on like West NA price, nutritional values. And he does an amazing job. So he and the river company prepare all the food for us the whole time. And that trip was amazing. And then in May, which is the month before that, so that one's on the summer solstice. So really June 17th, I think, but check out the website of 2024. And then a month before, the same folks, me, Eben, and Dopero, are taking a group of people to Umbria in Italy, about an hour and a half outside of Rome, to a 70-acre agriturismo olive grove, and like 12th century and 15th century stone buildings, and obviously updated a little bit. And just for, we're calling that trip Be Slow. And there's a lot of inspiration behind that, which if people check out the website, I do write a little one pager on that, which is slow food, which is like a grassroots cultural movement that started in Italy as in protest to the first McDonald's appearing next to this like otherwise pretty revered ancient site called the Spanish Steps in Rome. And basically that protest started into a global campaign. There's now people all around the world who care about this, to preserve ancient and traditional foodways, to give it a term. But basically, like, at the grocery store, there's a handful of vegetables left, and like we only grow like one kind of them. There used to be hundreds and hundreds of these things, thousands of them. And so there's regions all around the world where really interesting heirloom crops or just like traditional, what they would call foodways exist, like wild line caught fishermen in tiny little, boats doing it in the traditional way, or people like sifting the finest sea salt off of a special cove somewhere like they've done for hundreds of years. Or it could be, a certain type of potato that's only grown in this one area or best grown. And so all these different things are celebrated by farmers and chefs and the different people who are involved in this lifestyle. And it's like, without them, we just have the grocery store. So this is the real like diversity of our cultures and like of being human, is having developed these foodways over time. And to just see it all, become homogenized and industrialized would be, such a shame. We've already done it to such a great degree. It's like, these are almost like, they make a big deal out of extinct animals. Like it's the same thing. It's like these foodways are going extinct, and these food crops are going extinct. And you're just going to have, the handful of things that are industrially suitable. Because a lot of these heirloom crops, like you can't even transport them. They'd be mush by the time you get there. But if you ate it in the field or at a local market, your eyes would roll back because you've never known what a peach could be. So there's a really cool origin story, I would say, to our trip in Italy, which is called Be Slow. And it's really about tapping into slow culture, which was born right there in Italy. So it's also sort of a part of our own origin story, because we took a lot of inspiration from these Italian agriturismos when we came up with our concept for Be Here, the quote unquote hotel in the first place.
I love that. And you said that's in May?
Yeah, May 18th for that one. And then I think June 17th for the river trip. And the men's group is going to start February 8th. And I think this pod is going to come out sometime around the new year, give or take. And so just in time to hear about all these.
Dude, it's awesome. I love what you're doing. Thanks for sharing it here today. It's exciting. I'm excited to be a part of the men's group, men's hang, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
It'll be dope.
The men's hang / whatever else I just said.
Yeah. I also do want to just one shout out to my wife who was, we'll link to it. We'll link to the website, but the video on the new Be Here Farm website is my wife Peyton is featured prominently, and
a lot of the photos throughout the website in general. Yeah, she was our model for a full day photo and video shoot that, you have to see to believe.
It's incredible. Yeah, y'all did an incredible job. So
she was the best. I don't know how we could have done it without her.
There you go. Yeah. She felt that way. She felt very, she loved it and felt very appreciated. And not that she needed that, but I think it felt good. Yeah.
Well, you guys should check it out because she looks awesome. And, it's amazing to have friends like you and Pei.
Well, likewise. Thanks, brother.
We did it.
Yes.
A recorded episode to be released.